Good evening, everybody. We'll give it a minute for folks that want to join in. I'm going live to answer some questions that I've been getting a lot of lately for our community, but we're opening it up to the broader public audience because a lot of people have questions about the topic, which is how does private money work? How is it structured? What does it mean? What does it look like? We're going to take some time tonight to literally explain how it works. And if you're on Instagram, you might want to jump over to the Facebook or YouTube because I'm going to share some slides with you and literally show you exactly how private money works. How do we raise private money? What do we use private money for? What does it even mean? How do we structure the documents? How are people's money secured in a private money deal? What type of paperwork is necessary? What's the risk? What's the rewards? What's the point? We're going to cover a bunch of that tonight. So if you're on Instagram, feel free to join and follow along. But if you want to see the visuals, I'm going to go through actually it's a Jerry Norton deck, a private money guide that I'm going to go through. But I want to talk to people, both real estate investors, but also individuals who may not understand. Like you see me post these opportunities like, hey, I've got this deal. I'm looking for a capital partner. Hey, we've got this thing happening, looking for investors. I want to tell you guys and kind of explain how private money works, how it's secured, what the risks are, what the rewards are. I want to spend some time tonight kind of going over those details. We raise a lot of capital. I think I raised close to 5 million in private capital from individuals just last year, or in the last year, I should say. And so we raise a lot of capital for real estate. It's a great way. When people ask me what I do, I find myself less saying that I'm a real estate investor and more talking about how I partner with individuals who are interested in real estate, but don't have time to invest in real estate. We help people move their retirements into real estate. We help people move their stocks, bonds, mutual funds into real estate, all with the same tax benefits, all with the same structures. But I'm going to tell you guys tonight how we do that, how that paperwork works, what the risks are, and how it all works together. So if you're interested in being a private money lender, this is a great a talk for you. If you're interested as a real estate investor on how you can start to raise capital, this is going to be a great talk for you. And let me tell you this, what a lot of people generally, my screen just went black. Hopefully I'm still live. So let me see if, yeah, okay. My screen just went dead on me for a minute. But a lot of people think like, oh my gosh, private money, that must mean that these are like millionaires, right? I will tell you this, the majority of my investors, the majority of my private money partners, lenders, equity investors, all of the above are, what I call Joe the plumbers. Right. These are people that are not high net worth individuals, but they've got 30, 50, $100,000 in an IRA, a 401k, a brokerage account, and we help them figure out how to get better returns on the money than what they're seeing in their typical accounts. And we help people structure those things. And I'll even tell you this, like if you're interested in investing in real estate, you can use your retirement funds to invest in your own real estate deals. Most people don't know this, but you can actually use your 401k, IRA, 403b. You can use that money and go out and buy your own rental property. You can use that money to go out and buy a fix and flip. Now, there are limitations on how and what you can do within your tax deferred retirement accounts. But that's what we're going to talk about tonight is just the different ways that you can deploy capital and or become a partner with somebody who has the time and has the deals, but maybe needs capital to do these deals. We do all of our deals at this stage with private money partners. And there's a lot of different types of private money. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. But if you're on Instagram, you might want to jump over to Facebook, jump over to YouTube, the other places that we're streaming live, because I'm going to share a document with you that we're going to go through, and I'm going to literally teach you how private money works. And so if you're interested or you've got interest in this topic, I hope that this is somewhat informative for you tonight. So let me just primarily tell you a couple of different types of private money partners, different types of private money or private capital sources. And when I say private money, what I'm specifically talking about are individuals, right? We're not talking about private money kind of gets lumped up in this bigger banner of hard money, and that's not what we're talking about tonight. What we're talking about tonight is specifically individuals, Michael Miller, John Doe, Joe Smith, Jane Smith, all of these private individuals partnering their capital, whether it be through cash, whether it be through brokerage account, whether it be through 401k, 403b, any type of retirement funds. They're partnering their personal cash as an individual with a real estate transaction. That's what we're talking about when we talk about private money tonight. And there are a couple of different ways that people can become private money lenders or private money partners. The first is through just the most simplified, at least in my opinion, is through what we call note investing. Um, Private money notes are where effectively private individuals become the bank, right? They are lending their money to an investor, somebody like me, and they're lending that money in exchange for a security position in the project or the property that we're working with. Um, what a lot of people don't understand is to be a private money lender on a real estate transaction. You get effectively the same type of guarantee that the bank would get. When I go to Bank of America and I get a loan, they record against my property a deed of trust, or in some states it's just called a mortgage. And this is a security instrument that guarantees the money that they lend against the asset that they're lending to. And so when we think about private money, what a lot of people don't realize is that individuals have the ability to get that same level of connection and security with their money against the asset. Another thing that they get that is exactly like a bank, if they're going and they're working with somebody who's knowledgeable and knows how to run these transactions properly, what they're also getting is what we call lender's title insurance, right? Just like a bank would receive, you get insurance that guarantees that your position in that property and the title search that was done that showed that that property was clear for your position to be recorded is insured and guaranteed. This is really, really important. And actually, it's a mistake I see a lot of rookies make where they don't take the step to provide lenders title insurance. Now, anybody who's bought a house likely has dealt with title insurance as a buyer's title insurance. And this is what guarantees us that the property is indeed unencumbered, free and clear of any other judgments or liens against it. And you receive that typically as a buyer of a real estate transaction as a part of the escrow process. But what most people don't realize is that there's also another side of that same coin is another policy, which is for the lender to protect the lender's interest in that transaction against any encumbrances, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's something that a lot of people miss because it's not actually required, right? But if you're going to be a private money lender, then you want the private money security that any private money person would expect on a transaction, which would be lender's title insurance. So that's one way that people work with private capitals. They effectively become the bank. They lend a portion of money and they get a deed of trust or an interest in the property with a fixed rate of return for a fixed period of time. So you may become, you might be a private money lender. You've got $50,000 in an IRA or 401k, and you want to invest in somebody's project. We go through the process to convert that money over into investable cash into a real estate transaction, which is something that we will talk about in a minute. And then you get a contract, you get a mortgage instrument or a deed of trust. You get a promissory note, which outlines the terms of that agreement, right? It outlines the interest rate that's being paid, how long it's being paid, how it's being paid, and it provides the information on repayment. And then you receive all that money goes into escrow, and as a part of the closing, you receive all those documents, secured and recorded against the property. That's what escrow, they're the neutral third party that facilitates the transactions, so that we can be sure that not only are these documents drawn up properly, but they're recorded properly at the county or the city, against the property. And so what we do is we go through escrow, and escrow makes sure that all of those things have been done and recorded before distributing the money into the investment or into the asset that you're working with. And escrow and title also provide that title, insurance policy. So that's one type of private money. Another type of private money would be what we call equity partners, right? So unlike a private note or a note investment where you're investing a set amount of money for a set rate of return, right? In many cases, it's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12%, sometimes even more, right? We have a deal right now that I've been talking about where we're paying even more interest, right? And it has to do with risk profile, it has to do with speed, how quickly we need to be able to close. So there's a lot of factors to consider. But you're getting a fixed rate of return for a fixed period of time on a fixed amount of money, secured legally by a lien or a deed of trust position in the property. Whereas an equity note is where you're becoming an investor, not just as a lender, but you're becoming an interest holder in the property itself. So often in an equity deal, you're bringing that money to the table, not in exchange generally for a fixed rate of return for a fixed period of time, although certainly you can negotiate and double dip if it's appropriate, and you can work that out with the partner. But in most cases, an equity partner is bringing a certain amount of cash to a transaction in exchange for a percentage of ownership in the deal. This is what we call an equity partnership, right? Where you're bringing, say $50,000 to the table, $100,000 to the table in exchange for 50% ownership interest in the property. What this generally means, and every deal is different, and so you have to kind of work through those details, but generally what this means is that you have a interest in the risk and reward of the transaction. See, with a note deal, with a note investment, that amount of money that you invested in that deal is fixed by the note, which means that as an investor, if I go do a fix and flip, even if I lose money on that project, I still have to make you whole. I have a contract with a promissory note for a set amount of money for a set period of time, and I am legally responsible to make you whole regardless of the performance of the asset. So whether I do a fix and flip and I make $1 million, or I do a fix and flip and I lose $100,000, I still have to make my investor whole. Whereas with an equity deal, in most cases, what you're doing is you're participating in the risk and the reward. You're participating in the upside of the profit of the deal. You're participating in the upside of the cash flow if it's a rental property that you're holding for a longer period of time. You're participating in the growth potential of the asset. On the adverse side, you're also participating in the risk, right? You're participating in the unknowns. You're participating in the things that can go wrong with the deal. And so those are two different ways that you can be a private money partner. Now, I'll tell you that as an equity partner, you're generally looking at bigger, better returns, right? You're generally looking for a higher net return on your investment because you're taking the ride with the partner or with the investor, right? You're taking that risk on, or a part of that risk on, but you're also taking on the potential reward. Whereas with a note investment, I never want to imply that there's zero risk, but it's a lower risk transaction because you're secured and fixed at a set rate of return for a set period of time in a set lien position. And if and when that property is liquidated, you will always know that you will have that priority of repayment with your return as a part of the deal. So those are some things that to think about: the equity partnership, private money, or note investing. There's a lot of other ways that you can invest private money as well. You can do things like REITs, which are real estate investment trusts. Those are pools of real estate assets, similar to an ETF or a stock, right? You're owning a portion of a portfolio, and you can use your capital, whether it's retirement or cash equivalent money. You can invest that way. Syndications are very, very popular, right? Where you can, you can participate and partner with an investor who's buying, $100 million assets, right? And there's 1,000 investors in one 500 unit apartment building, right? Or 100 unit apartment building, and you get a fractional share of ownership of the bigger asset. And they're bringing a lot of investors together. Most of what we do is really just connected to an individual private money partner to an individual deal, whether it's a multifamily, single family apartment, doesn't really matter. But we're connecting individuals to individual deals. We're not doing syndications. We don't have a fund. We're really just partnering with, and most of our partners are note investors, right? They like to get those double digit returns. They like it to be reliable. They like the consistent cash flow. And they're comfortable with getting a better return than they would receive if they were just in the stock market, for example. But they don't want to take the risk and the ride of an equity deal. And so a lot of folks, they live in that kind of tension where they have to decide like where it fits, where it wants to be. A lot of my note investors become equity investors down the road, right? They get in, they do a deal, they do a couple of deals, they get a return on their money, and they go, this is kind of cool. What are some other ways that I can invest? There isn't one that's better or worse. You just have to understand the process, the risks, and the rewards. So if you're on the Facebook or the YouTube, I'm going to share something with you, which for those of you on Instagram are not going to be able to see, but the here it is. This is actually a document prepared by Jerry Norton. I'm going to walk you through because I think it does an excellent job of really just outlining the private money process. And helping people understand. As a matter of fact, if you're a new investor or somebody who inquires to partner with us, I send you this document. I'm like, hey, this document has all the questions that you don't know how to ask. This document's got all of the things that you should be thinking about as a private money lender or a private money partner. This gives it to you in a very visual format, and I'm going to go through it really high level. I'm not going to spend a lot of time getting into the weeds, but I want to expose you to it so that you understand. So this is, a step-by-step guide. And, he says, ultimately, they're in that 8 to 12% range. That's very similar to us. We do deals that are higher than that. I'm offering, 20% on a deal right now because I have to be able to move quickly on it. And so you have to, know kind of what types of deals you're interested in. But what Jerry kind of outlines here is a step-by-step guide to learn how to successfully become a private money lender, a private money partner, and get, double digit returns guaranteed and secured by real estate. So let's go through a couple of the pages here. What is private lending? I think we've talked about this. So I'm going to kind of keep going down here. One of the questions comes up a lot is why would anybody borrow money at 8, 10, 12, 14% when to charge a lot less? Well, there's a lot of reasons for some of which are just practicalities, right? As investors, we have caps on how many conventional loans we're allowed to take, right? So that's one consideration that comes up in these transactions where I just don't have as much access because I have so much property and so many conventional loans that I am capped on what I'm able to get. But another reason is that some of the properties that we invest in are not bankable. And what I mean by that is that we buy a lot of distressed properties, for example. We buy properties not for the value that they have today, but for the value they will have when we're done with them. As a matter of fact, we're doing, I have probably 10 active flips total right now, but we just did one. I think I posted a video about it recently where we bought this property for $55,000. It's up in Michigan. We have a $30,000 rehab budget. So we're going to be into this property, $85,000 plus carrying costs. So let's just call it 90 grand. We hadn't even started demolition on this property, and it's a full rehab. It's a small house. It's a 2-1. It's like 800 square feet. We hadn't even started demolition, but one of our renters on another property that we had was telling us that they couldn't find a house in their budget. And we're like, wow, that's crazy. We've got this opportunity. It's going to be a brand new turnkey house. And long story short, we were able to get this property in contract for 154,000 before we ever even started demolition. So we're looking at a, what is that? A 65, $70,000 profit on a property that is completely distressed. It's completely dilapidated. Well, I couldn't get a loan from a bank to buy that property and then fix it up and then turn around and sell it, because the bank doesn't lend. A traditional bank isn't going to lend on a distressed property. It has to meet minimum habitability requirements. It has to meet certain code standards and inspection standards. Well, where private money comes in is they're able to look at the whole picture and go, I see the potential of this property. I see how you're going to profit from this property. And so I'm willing to lend to you when a conventional bank would not. That's another reason why investors borrow money at a much higher rate than they would from a typical bank, because the red tape to get into these deals obviously is lower. Another reason is just speed and availability of the funds. If I go to a bank, I'm 4-6 weeks, right, on average to get a loan. I have a deal right now. I've been posting about it. If you guys are interested, DM me. But I got a deal right now that I have to close in 14 days. And it's turnkey. It's perfectly habitable. It's totally bankable, but I just simply don't have the time to go get a conventional loan from the bank. I don't have the time to go fill out the application, turn in my tax returns, turn in my financials, turn in my bank statements, wait for them to underwrite, go back and forth. I simply don't have the time. One of the conditions of the deal was that we would close in 14 days or sooner. So where I'm willing to pay a much higher elevated rate of interest to get funding in a much shorter period of time, because I've got $100,000 profit opportunity on this project. So paying 15, 20% even for a short period of time so that I can capture $100,000 worth of profit is absolutely worth it to me. So that's why anyone would borrow money at 8, 10, 12 or higher percent interest when the banks would charge less. It's convenience, it's access, it's speed, and it's also understanding that the assets that we're buying sometimes are not bankable until we're done with the remodel. The next slide, how do I evaluate whether or not private money loan is a good or bad investment? This is really important. And this is specifically to people that are considering becoming private money lenders or private money partners. But this is important for you as real estate investors to understand how to clearly articulate the security and the safety to your investors so they know that their money is secure. So the first one is loan to value. Really simply put, it's the percentage of debt against the total value of the property. If the property is worth $100,000 and I take out a $70,000 loan, I've taken 70% of the property's total value, making it a 70% loan to value. The higher the loan to value ratio, the higher the risk. So for most private money lenders, they're looking for, if their loan to value ratio is higher, they're going to want those higher rates of interest. It's a risk reward equation. If the loan to value ratio is lower, well, obviously the terms can be better and they're generally a lot more comfortable, a lot more secure, because they're able to know that if something goes south on the property and the property has to be liquidated, that there's plenty of room to get their money paid back on the back end. Most investors do not exceed 70% loan to value. Now, there's a lot of variations to that rule. There's a lot of different things to consider, but particularly when you're doing fix and flips, most investors are looking in that 70, 75% range. What that also says is that if the market were to take a big hit and the values were to be way less than we expected them to be, the market can afford to take a 25 or 30% reduction in price, which, by the way, is what happened in 2008. To give you some context of reference, the market can take a 30% hit and your money is still secured by the asset. You can still get your money back out. So I won't go through the example on the screen. If you're on YouTube, you're seeing me share screen here. I won't go through all of these examples, but I have all of these resources are available to our students and in our private Facebook group. You can just make a note in there and we can drop this in. Jerry Norton drew this up, so give him all the credit for it. Um, the numbers. So the first thing that you need to look at on determining whether or not a private money deal is a good deal or a bad deal, a safe deal or a not safe deal. The first is loan to value. The second is the borrower, the investor, the person that you're investing in. The truth is the asset is important, but the investor that you're working with is even more important. The experience, the knowledge, the track record, the history of being able to show that they know how these deals work is so critical to securing your money as a private money partner. You want to know that this investor isn't just trying to, get his feet wet or just try to cut his teeth on your investment. And if he is, then you need to understand the risk that produces and find ways to mitigate that risk. I love what Jerry says here, that the more experienced and successful the investor, the safer your investment as a lender. That's absolutely true. That's why we don't have a hard time raising private money, because I've raised millions of dollars in private money, successfully paid back 100% of my lenders with their interest, and we've grown our real estate portfolio to over $10 million using private money. We have a track record. Many of my private money partners don't even analyze my deals anymore. I'm not saying that that's the thing that you should do or the way that it should work, but they're less concerned about my deal than they are with me, because our interests are aligned. They know that I have to make money, and they trust my track record to make sure that they're whole. So a couple of things just to consider, if you're not on the live where you can see the doc, it says, what do I need in order to feel comfortable with the repairs to the property? See, one thing that's really important to understand, particularly if you're a money lender in a fix and flip deal, is that the experience of the investor isn't just about the experience of the paperwork or the deal finding, or how finances work. The experience goes all the way into the construction process, managing contractors. I mean, one of the greatest risks of a fix and flip is the contractors being flaky. You got to know how to navigate and manage these contracts, and do these things in a way that are ultimately able to help the deal go forward, but also portray confidence to your contractors that you know what you're doing. These contracts will take you for an absolute run if they get this sense that you don't know what you're doing. Somebody made a comment that Pace is working on a Paceport, so you can see how many deals you have done if you paid your loans back, so we can protect ourselves. I love that. I don't know exactly what that means, but effectively it sounds like there's Pace Morby is who he's referring to, is creating a portal where people can track how successful the investor has been with private money. I think that's amazing. It would take a lot of the guesswork out of private money people to be able to know, is this person bona fide and credible, or is this person just blowing smoke? It's really hard to be able to verify that. You've got to be able to kind of go through and see the track record. For my new investors, especially the ones that are skeptical, because a lot of our investors come through social media, I have no problem just literally pulling up public record and showing them all the properties that we own, right? Showing them, walking them through the deals. So sometimes you have to be able to be patient and willing to walk people through the process of your own track record. And as a lender, I think that's even more critically important to understand who you're investing in, not just what you're investing in. But understanding the repair process, the scope of work, there's a lot of different schools of thought. I'm not going to get into the nuances of construction draws and things like that. But it's important to understand, what is the rehab plan? If there's a lot of rehab involved, how is that money going to be allocated? How are you making sure that the money's going to the right places? How do we secure an understanding that this property is going to be brought up to its best and highest use? The next point is, will the real estate investor make any money before the property is fixed up, or do all the profits come at the sale? I'll just read you what Jerry says, because I agree with it. It says, that depends. Successful real estate investors build profit centers into each real estate deal in order that their real estate business can cash flow and maintain overhead and expenses. So the idea here is that it's less important on necessarily when the real estate investor can pull certain portions of profit from the deal, because you want them to be successful. It costs me a lot of money to run my enterprise. It costs me a payroll. It costs me rehab. It costs me accounting and all of these different support systems that we have built out. So we build into our deals as a part of our rehab process. We build into those deals profit centers where we can draw on some of our profit as the project goes, so that we can continue to keep the engine running. And that's not something that you should be afraid of, but you should understand how that's working. No real estate investor should be taking all of the profit on the front end before a deal is done. You can kind of go through here. I'm just going to kind of keep moving us through, but you're welcome to get this guide, or I can send it to you. You can read through some of the details. What are some additional things that you should consider when you're making a private loan? So there are two basic things we already talked about, aside from the loan to value, that is, and the experience of the investor. You should, and I said this on the front end, receive a lender's title policy. This protects you defects in title. This may not even have anything to do with the investor that you're working with. This has everything to do with this has everything to do with title defects, right? And even your investor won't know about title defects. So title insurance is critical, and so many private money partners and investors miss this critical thing to protect their interests. The second is that you should be named loss payee on the real estate investor's property casualty insurance. So this is just somebody this is just another measure of security. You should be listed on the policy so that you can make sure that you are protected in the event of a total loss. I've talked about title insurance. I'm going to kind of keep going here. What types of insurance, we can dig into this, but fire, lightning, explosion, earthquake, all the typical insurances that you'd want on a property. Do I need to pay to close, or do I need to use a title company or attorney? I will tell you this, there's no rule, but it is just good business. I tell people all the time that you should not be sending money to any individual on any type of investment or real estate transaction without going through a title company or an attorney of escrow. What this allows you to do is have a neutral third party that is reviewing your documentation, reviewing the process, recording it properly with the county, and ensuring all of the boxes have been checked before the release of funds. And it's just it's not required, it's not a legal requirement, but to do it outside of title and escrow is just bad business. So I would encourage you to do that. What happens if the real estate investor stops paying on the private money loan? Well, as a private lender, you have a certain number of rights. The borrower stops paying, just like the bank would have. You can call the loan due and accelerate your payment. In other words, call for an early payoff, right? You can literally just go to the investor and say, hey, you got to pay me off. Like, you're defaulted. We're going to accelerate this note and you got to pay it off now. The second, just like a bank, is you can foreclose and take the property, right? I always tell private money investors, that don't invest in any property that you don't want to own, right? If you don't want to own it, you probably shouldn't be lending or investing on it, because that is one of the outcomes if your investor was to default, is that you may have to foreclose or take the property. And then, of course, you can always go after the borrower legally, right? In a litigious environment, and every state is different, you can always proceed with legal action against the borrower as well. What if a renter is in the property what if a renter is in the property and the borrower stops paying? Your closing escrow can prepare an assignment of rents. This is kind of a nuanced deal, especially if you're working with a lot of people with fix and flips. But you can actually have a assignment of rents that can be signed by the borrower at closing, which basically allows you to collect rents instead of the borrower if the borrower stops making payments. For example, if I, if somebody were to lend me money and I decided that I was going to be a nefarious guy, I was going to be, kind of a bad operator, what would happen is that you've lent me money on a rental property that's got a renter that's generating cash flow, and I continue to collect the rents from the renter, but I stop making payments to you. An assignment of rents would protect you in that situation where you could begin to collect the rents directly from the renter. A couple of comments came in, so let me pause here to make sure you can perform. He has someone who worked for the government that can look our records. Okay, yeah, it sounds like Pace is working on some cool systems to help vet potential investors for lenders. Somebody else says, as a broker for a PML, we can fund as quickly as 72 hours, but all depends on the property, the glitches with title, the time, the paperwork. Yeah, so the the benefits of, as somebody, again, the nuance here is the difference between hard money as a category and private money as kind of like a subcategory, right? Private money is hard money. But when I talk about private money, I'm not talking about private money as a part of institution. I'm talking about brokered funds or brokered hard money lenders that are taking private individual money and deploying it into these types of deals on behalf of borrowers. I'm talking about Uncle Joe, Bob the plumber, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, these folks that have access to capital, whether it be through a retirement account, whether it be through a brokerage account, cash equivalent account. These types of people are excellent sources of partnership to make and scale and grow your real estate business. And what I want to do is help those types of people bridge the gap of understanding between what they're doing with their capital now, getting 5, 6, 7% in the, in the Wall Street casino, to be able to deploy it into other opportunities that are just as, if not more secure, that are providing double-digit returns secured by real estate. And so for me, it's like, I'm not anti-hard money. I use tons of hard money. But what we're talking about here are the people that have cash or cash equivalent and are looking to deploy that into some of these deals to get those bigger returns. And, you can partner if you're, the type of person who's like, I just don't want to have to think about research, find a partner. I don't know anybody that's in the game that I trust, that I want to work with. You can go, there's institutions, there's brokers. We got one on the call right now who would be glad to help you broker. Their job is to vet deals, vet the property, check the boxes, make sure the paperwork's right. And the way that they make money is by charging a spread above what you're getting paid in interest, as well as fees and points to secure these loans. And so they literally get paid by taking your money, vetting the security of the asset, deploying that money into these types of deals, and then upselling to the investor the interest and the fees on top of what you're making as an individual. And it really is a set it and forget it kind of passive way to invest. The returns are going to be a little bit lower, right? Because there is a middleman, but it is absolutely a great way to invest if that's what you're interested in. So there's private money. The thing I love and hate about private money is there's no rules in private money. It's like the Wild West. Like there's very, very little rules on how you can structure, what you can do. And that's great news because it gives a ton of flexibility on how we can make creative deals work and become win-wins for people with money and people with deals. But it also is, a little bit like analysis paralysis for people. They don't always know, like, what do I do? How do I do it? Where do I start? How do I get into the game? They don't know what they don't know. And so I'm hoping to have this conversation to help people demystify a little bit and go oh, I can actually invest my, I mean, so many of our investors right now are just done with the Wall Street roulette wheel. They're just done with their 401k being a roller coaster, and this idea that they got 20% one year, but then they look at the last 10 and realized it was 6% and it doesn't feel so good anymore. When they can get guaranteed fixed returns at 10, 12% secured by an asset that they actually understand, That's what we're trying to help people understand, is that hard assets are one of the greatest investment vehicles. Whether you're a lender, an equity partner, or another type of investor, I'm like a huge advocate for this, obviously because I'm in the game, but also because I come from the Wall Street world. I come from institutional finance, and I get nervous when I look at people investing in things that they don't understand. And very few people that I know today really understand what's going on Wall Street. And this is a very, very approachable alternative for those types of people. So let me go through. There's just a few more slides and then I'll kind of wrap it up. And if there's questions on here, I'd be happy to answer them. But what paperwork is involved with the private money lender, I'm going to go over. I'm actually going to show you a couple of examples of the paperwork that comes through. But ultimately, you should get a couple of documents, 2 documents for every deal, right? A promissory note. This is signed by the investor, and this is evidence of the promise to pay, right? This is your, this is the money guarantee. The second is sometimes called a mortgage, sometimes called a deed of trust. It is the financial instrument that secures somebody's investment in the deal. It secures the money to the deal. So those 2 documents should exist in any type of private money or private note investment at a minimum. And these documents are recorded at the county, right? And this is why we use an escrow title agent or attorney, because they verify and make sure that these documents are recorded properly against the property legally at the county. How do I actually fund the private money? Where does it go, right? We've talked about that. It goes to escrow. Jerry says it here in this document. I love it. It says, let's give the answer to this question with a statement. Never give money directly to a real estate investor. It's just a poor business practice. When you're ready to make a private money note or loan, all of your money will go from your bank account directly to the closing agent. This is good business, and this is what you should do. There are exceptions to this that can happen. There are situations where, if you've got a deep rapport with the investor, like there are exceptions to this rule, but particularly if you're out in the wild working with people and working deals, then, we need to go through escrow. What do I need to monitor my private loan? There's a couple of ways you can do this, right? Like you can do it, yourself. You can do it with the attorney, but you can also use a third party entity, right? You can use a loan servicing company. You can get appraisers involved. You can get inspectors involved. There's a lot of different functions, and you just got to know like what you're wanting to do to kind of grow or increase your security position in the deal. Somebody said, I'm thinking about offering a seller-backed mortgage. This would be a property I'm not flipping, but going to be living in long term. How would a balloon payment work for a refinance? I want to make sure that I'm understanding the question. I think the question is, when you say a seller-backed mortgage, are you talking about like a seller finance? So you're trying to buy a property that the seller is going to become the bank on, or is there a different type of structure? I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Like how would a balloon payment work for refinance? So I think what you're asking is, if I buy a property with seller finance, which is a great way to buy property, by the way. Yes, correct. Okay, cool. So what the question that Ryan's asking is when I buy a property, seller finance, and seller finance is, by the way, sellers are my favorite private money lenders. Sellers are the best private money lenders because not only do they have an understanding and an interest in the property already, but when inevitably I pay them off and they've got all this money left over, who do you think I'm tapping on the shoulder to ask if they want to invest in future deals? Because they've had an experience and a track record of payments with me. So private money and sellers are my favorite private money lenders. But Ryan's asking, how would the exit strategy? So if I buy a property, so say I got a property for sale and I own it free and clear. It's worth $500,000. I'm going to sell it to Ryan. Ryan's going to put 10% down, and I'm going to owner finance him $450,000 for 5 years. And so at year 5, so Ryan gives me a 10% down payment, which on a $500,000 house would be $50,000. And I'm going to offer him owner financing for the $450,000 remainder for a set period of time. In this case, I'm just saying 5 years. You can negotiate whatever terms you want. At the end of 5 years, there's what's called a balloon payment, where the balloon pops on the loan, and whatever is left over minus my down payment minus the payments I had made towards principal, whatever is left over has to be paid in full at the maturity or at the balloon of the property. And so Ryan's asking, how would a balloon payment work for a refinance? Well, there's a couple of different ways you can deal with a balloon payment. One is, of course, you can pay it off, right? If you somehow in this scenario accumulate $450,000 over the next 5 years, you can just simply pay it off and it goes away. The second option, which is probably again obvious but must be said, is you can sell the property, right? If you sell, but if you buy the property today and it's worth 500,000, in 5 years, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be worth 700,000 if you're in California. And so you can just sell the property, pay off whatever's left on the balloon, and profit the difference. The third option is that you can refinance that property. So there's probably a reason why you're owner financing now, and it's one of a couple of reasons. It's either that the terms are better. So the reason why I love seller financing is because I can get way better terms from an individual than I can get from Wells Fargo right now. Not always, but a lot of times. So it's either that you're getting better terms, or you're what we call a penalty box buyer, somebody who can't qualify with Wells Fargo today, but it's not because they don't have the income or the money. It's they have something else going on in their financial life that disqualifies them from conventional financing. And so the idea with that type of buyer is that in 5 years, there's going to be plenty of equity in this property. And hopefully you will have hedged up your financial position to qualify for a conventional refinance loan, where you just go to a bank and say, hey, I owe now $25,000 on this property. It's worth $700,000. Can I do a refinance where you pay off this balloon payment? And now my loan is with Bank of America for the next however long, versus with bank of, private money person who sold me the house. That's another option. The fourth option is to bring in a new private money partner. I do this often. If it makes sense for me to continue to have private money, but one of my private money people that are on the deal now need to get their money out for whatever reason, well, I've got a network of private money partners and private money lenders. I just go knock on the door of those folks and I go, hey, does somebody want to come in and replace this mortgage position and pay off this loan? Here's the deal. Here's the details. This is why it's a good deal. This is why it's a win-win, and they can replace that. So I don't know, Ryan, if that answers your question, but you can pay off the property cash. You can sell the property. You can refinance the property with a bank or an investment, like a hard money or DSCR type loan if it's not owner occupied, or you can bring in another investor to pay off whatever's left. And now you just have a new private money investor as the bank. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, you can drop it in the comments. Somebody else says, definitely better to invest retirement funds barely growing into a property this way. You can turn your money into almost instant cash flow. Yeah. Grant Cardone's doing this. So what Grant's doing that's different than what we do, well, for starters, is he's doing it in the billions of dollars, not the mere just millions. So he's playing at a whole nother level, but he's doing syndications. So he's doing what we talked about earlier, where he's going and taking, I might have a $1 million deal or a $500,000 deal. And I go, hey, I need $50,000 from a private person. And it's going to be one person connected to this one deal. And their interest is secured in that one deal. But it's just really one, sometimes two people in one deal. What Grant's doing is what's called a syndication, where he goes, hey, I'm going to get 10,000 people together, and we're going to go buy a 500 unit apartment building in Miami for $100 million. And it is a great way. Syndications are a great way to invest. They have, he has a minimum threshold of 5,000. There's a lot of different nuances with it, but you can get great returns. I saw one of his offerings at like 18%. But they're projections, right? They're not, unlike a note investment, which what we're talking about here. These are fixed rates of returns. Syndications also have the risk reward ratio of a typical equity deal, because you are getting fractional ownership in the asset itself, but you're also hedging your risk across 1,000 investors, as opposed to, just one or two investors in a smaller deal. It's, again, one's not better than the other. It's just, you got to know your options. You got to know what's available. All right. I'm going to hit a couple more points, and then we're going to, if you got more questions, drop them in. I appreciate the interaction. How do I get paid when the loan is due or the property is sold? So a payoff letter will be requested by title when the property is sold or liquidated. And that will effectively state the amount of money that is owed in payoff. So for example, if you lent $100,000 and you deferred your interest, and now I owe you $110,000 on that payoff, when I sell the property, it is going to go into escrow just like it did when I bought it. And the buyer's funds come into escrow as well. And escrow, because of that payoff demand letter and because of your interest, your lien position in the property, is going to go through and guarantee that each person is paid before I, as the investor, get a dime. So all that, when a property is sold, it goes back into escrow. The buyer's funds come into escrow, and in order of lien position, the investors, the banks, the lien holders, etc., are paid off systematically in the order of their lien position, and whatever's left over is given to me at the end as the investor. He's got a few examples in here of how this works. And the final point here is, did the real estate investor still make a profit? Well, let's hope so, right? If they didn't, something went wrong. But the great news is, people ask me this question all the time. How can you afford to pay 10, 12, this deal I'm doing right now, 20% interest? It's very, very simple. I'm not paying you that. If it's a rental deal and I'm paying you 10, 12%, the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm not paying it. The renter is. Generally speaking, in those deals, I've got so much cash flow that I'm comfortable to pay you a 10, 12% interest rate on a property that's generating $1,000 or more in cash flow, because that money is being carved off of my positive cash flow. I'm not paying for that. The renter is. So it's easy for me to do that deal. The second side of it is, say it's not a rental deal, say it's a fix and flip, or say it's this deal that I'm working on right now, which, by the way, is a wholesale. For those of you that don't know, the way that a wholesale works is when you've got a short timeline, too short of a timeline to assign the contract as a wholesale, but there's a big enough spread where you still want to make the deal work. You buy it as a wholesale, which means that I have to buy the property. I have to take ownership of the property. I have to fully pay for the property, but then I'm going to turn around and put it straight back on the market at a premium. And the reason why the seller's selling it to me at a discount is because I'm able to close in 14 days instead of her putting it on market and closing in 4 months, right? So with those types of deals, I'm bringing in private money for that, right? I'm going to bring in a private money partner who's going to fund the deal at 300, and on that deal, it's $350,000 or $360,000. But the value of that property currently on market is $490,000. So we're going to turn around, we're going to buy this thing for $350,000, $360,000. We're going to turn around and we're going to put it back on the market at $490,000 because we can afford to wait. And so all I'm doing is bridging the gap between the purchase and the sale with private money. And because I need to do it super quickly, I'm offering an aggressive rate of return, because I can't afford to have investors come around kicking the tires trying to decide in him and haw if they want to make a deal work. I need to motivate somebody who's got the access to capital to go, here's my 350 because I really like that rate of return. And the answer is very simple. I'm not paying 20%. The deal is, if I pay 20%, I'm still going to make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on this property because the deal has so much room. So these are different examples where it's like people like get really stressed out. I mean, I have an investor that I've met with a number of times who has $1 million sitting in cash and he really wants to do something with it, but he gets so stressed out. And it's like this, it's like every time I talk to him, it's always the same thing. It's like this skepticism that it's too good to be true. It's like, how can you pay me 12% when I'm getting 4% over here and 6%? And it's like literally his own skepticism is preventing him from investing because he can't wrap his head around the idea that I'm not paying the rate of interest. The deal is. And as a business person, the rate that I pay to get the deal done is literally set up in a way that is just a cost of doing business. I don't think twice about it after I write the check. Now, don't get me wrong. When I bring in private money into deals, I'm trying to get into cheaper money any which way I can. But like this deal we just got locked up today or yesterday is a deal that I don't have the ability. Calls you everyday stressed. Exactly. I don't have the ability to just pull 400 grand out of thin air. And I don't have the time to go work my private money relationships. All of my private capital is, the big numbers are out right now. So I have to get out there and I have to offer a little bit more aggressive returns. But it doesn't hurt my feelings. Why? Because I'd rather have, 80% of this than 100% of nothing. And that's how we make these deals work. And so we partner with people in their money. And by the way, guys, that's just one example. I mean, I literally just did a deal this week with an investor they had a 403B. They're an educator. They were in education. They had $30,000 in a retirement account. And they're like, I'd love to do something with you, but I just don't think that I have enough money to do it. And I'm like, I do deals with people with 30 grand all the time. They're smaller deals. They're in second position or third position. Like they're different types of structures that have different profiles. They're not, but their returns are connected to the amount of investment. But I still want to help people grow. I'm never going to turn. Now there are limits, right? Like I'd say that the average investment probably has to start around 25 or 30,000, right? Because it's hard to make a deal. It's hard to get a deal done for less than that. But we do a ton of deals at $30,000 entry fees, $25,000 entry fees that I bring private money into to help them start to build their investing and their partnership vehicle. Because by the way, if they have great experiences with me at $30,000 and then they hit the lotto in 5 years and get $30 million, who do you think they're going to call? Right? I want people to have we have a it's kind of tongue in cheek. It sounds obvious, but unfortunately in investor world, it's not so obvious all the time. But I tell my team all the time, my investors, Michael Miller investors, DPC Capital investors, do not lose money, period. That's not how it works in our world. If I lose money, my investors are made whole. If DPC Capital or Everling Group or any of my companies lose on a deal, my investors still make money. Why? Because if they lose money, even legitimately, even my capital partners, even if I can legitimately pass a loss on to somebody, why would I ever do that? Because if somebody loses $1 with me, then they're never going to reinvest in the future. I lose that partnership. And I'll be honest with you, I don't care about somebody's $30, $50, $100, $200,000. I care about their $30, $50, $100, $200,000 over and over and over again. I can take somebody with $100,000 nest egg and turn that $100,000 into millions of dollars in capital by recycling it deal after deal after deal after deal. Somebody put in the comment, your name is all you got. My name is literally what makes this business work for me. And the second somebody loses money, it's over, right? I'm never going to get an investment from that person again. So it sounds obvious, but unfortunately in our game, it's not. I tell our team, our investors don't lose money, period. Now we can't formally make that, make that, the attorneys won't let me make that a formal agreement. But the reality is that's how we treat this thing. And I honestly, probably to an unhealthy degree, treat everybody's money as if it were my grandma's. Guys, it is stressful. I will tell you this. Now, if you're on here and you're like thinking about raising capital or you haven't done it before, I will tell you guys this. It is stressful to use other people's money to do deals. And it should be. The people that aren't stressed out when they raise capital terrify me, because it just tells me that they don't have a healthy amount of respect and understanding for other people's money. This is not, when you're dealing with private capitals, particularly when you're dealing with retirement, you have to treat these people's money as if it's your grandma's. I literally, and honestly, like, my therapist will probably tell you, probably agree with you, but like, to an unhealthy degree, I carry around all of the private money that we raise, all of the investments that we do, all of the deals that we do. I walk around as if this is my grandma's money, as if this is my dad, mom, brother, sister. Like, I treat every investor, every dollar I get, as if it was mine, because if I don't, and I don't have that healthy pressure, and I make a mistake, I need to feel the weight of what that could mean for somebody's financial future. We have millions of dollars of people's retirement income. We have to feel a healthy amount of responsibility. Now, there's probably a better balance between like healthy and where I'm at, because I carry it around heavy. But I feel like the guys that scare me are the guys that are raising millions and millions of dollars and seem to have no care in the world. I'm like, man, you guys terrify me. Like, you really, really scare me. I want to have a healthy amount of stress. I want to have a healthy amount of pressure to perform, and I want to make sure that I can under promise and over deliver every time. And nobody's got 100% track record. Mistakes are made, things that aren't even mistakes, just stuff happens. But you've got to be balanced in a position where you can always make your investors whole. So if you're thinking about raising capital, I want to emphasize that it's not hard. It is not difficult to get people to buy in, to raise money, to get these returns, because the deals are the deals are the deals. But it should come at a certain amount of heavy responsibility. And if it doesn't, then I would caution you to really question if you're prepared, mature, and ready to start utilizing other people's money. Because if you're not feeling a little bit stressed out about leveraging other people's wealth to build your own, then you might not have the professional maturity yet to be able to do it. So, guys, I'm going to show you just one quick thing. Then we're going to wrap. I wanted to show you guys it's boring paperwork, but just so you guys can see it. See here, share window. This is another Jerry Norton pack. I just stole everything from Jerry, so shout out Jerry Norton. These are the documents. These are examples of what the documents should look like. So we talked about a mortgage, right? A mortgage, in some states it's a mortgage, in other states it's a deed of trust. So this should be being completed, and escrow can actually complete this for you. An attorney can complete this for you. Transactions do it for you as well. A second one is a promissory note, right? And there's, again, they're not one size fits all. There's a lot of different options for this, but promissory note and a mortgage. And then a deed of trust. So if you're in a state like California, Washington, Nevada, etc., deeds of trust are what lenders use to secure their interest in a property. If you're in another state like Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, I think Florida, I'm not 100% sure on that, they use mortgages instead of deeds of trust. It's the same thing. It's just it's kind of a nuanced document. So just wanted to kind of give you guys a little quick exposure to like what that looks like and kind of how it lays out. But the promissory note is going to lay out the terms of the deal. The deed of trust is going to lay out the legal security of the deal. And both of these should be being recorded by a title agent, escrow officer, or attorney as a part of your deal. So I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions that I missed. Appreciate that. You guys are awesome. Thank you for jumping in. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, or YouTube, we're going to try to start going live more and just having more of this stuff, because we want to help people. Yes, obviously it helps us build our brand. Yes, it helps us, build partnerships. But my passion, and when we started Dead Presidents Club, was to help people break out of the rat race and learn how to do money different, to get out of the shame cycles of money and really figure out how to go from survival to thriving. And that's the goal here. So we're going to try to do a lot more of this as well. Somebody says, shout out Sean Anderson. Sean Anderson is one of our students. I don't know if he's on here and that's why you're shouting him out, but Sean Anderson is one of our students. He's crushing it. I think he's got 2 deals in contract right now. He's had a few deals kick him in the butt, but he's really crushing it. And all of our students, by the way, if you want to get into the mentorship, we have a mentorship. We got a free Facebook group you can join and get support from the community. And we also have a dedicated mentorship where we have 30 hours a month of live training, as well as active dialing training, sales training, deal training, where you're talking to real life sellers and we're partnering with you on deals to help you get them across the finish line and ultimately get you paid to learn how to do the game. So wanted to let you guys know, quick little shout out for that. I need to raise 900,000 for hotels to become converted into a Section 8 in LA. Bro, you know the game, right? You got to get out there. You got to raise it. Now, a deal like that, you could do it one of 2 ways. You could, you sound like you kind of got this figured out, so you probably know this, but you could either private raise that with a person or 2, right? Some bigger investors, or you could put together with an attorney and syndicate that. It wouldn't be hard to raise 900 grand in a syndication. And so, I would do that with an attorney. When you get into syndication world, you start dealing with SEC and different regulatory requirements. So you really want to make sure that you're not playing out of your depth. But that a fund syndication, those bigger capital raises are great ways to get into some of these bigger deals. But you don't have to do that. I mean, you could get literally one person to write a $900,000 check if the terms are right and you do the network. And I will tell you guys this, if you're looking to raise capital, I've never asked anybody for money. I'm a Gator with Pace and all kinds. Oh yeah. I mean, if you're in the Gator community, then you'll find $900,000 laying on the ground. So you won't have any problems there. But if you're looking to raise capital, I will tell you this, it is not as complicated as you think. All it is about telling your stories to the right people enough times. I've never asked anybody for money. Maybe my family, like early on, we probably asked, like, hey, do you want to partner with me on this deal or whatever? And like, I'm not ashamed of being like, yeah, I've had my family invest with me, but I've had exponentially more people invest with me that are not related or connected in any way. And it's never been because I've asked for money. It's always been because I've showed up, told stories, and provided value. And so I would encourage you guys, if you're looking to raise capital, it takes 6 or 9 months, genuinely, like dedicated, consorted effort, 6 to 9 months to really start to get the engine going. Because people don't invest the first time they hear you're a real estate guy or trying to get into the game. They invest once they've seen a track record and they're hearing the same story over and over and over again. And so I would just encourage you, like, start telling the story. Start telling, like, every single person on this call and anybody who's watching the playback has a brand. Let me be clear. Like, everybody in the world has a brand. They have when people say your name, people think something about you. I got to plug my computer back in. So sorry for Instagram. You're getting the Blair Witch Project version of this. There we go. When people say your name, they think something. And so the goal of building your brand is not to become a social media influencer. It's just to recognize that when people say Michael Miller, I want them, in addition to whatever else they think about me, which I hope is good stuff, I want them to think that guy's a smart guy who knows stuff about investing. And oh yeah, by the way, he's in real estate. And I think he knows where to put money. If I get money and I don't know what to do with it, I think he's a guy that I can call. That's literally all capital raising is. That's literally all it requires. He's just building that narrative, building that brand. And then if you want to double down on it, you can start, building the network. You can go to meetups, you can go to events, you can go to chamber events, and you can start to network and build your circumference of capital that way much quicker. But really just learning to build into your narrative what it is you're passionate about and what it is you're doing is ultimately how people find success in this capital raising game. So listen, guys, it's been an hour of rambling about private capital. For those of you that have been on the whole time, bless you. Appreciate the engagement. I really do. We're going to try to continue to do more of this where we're just here to give value. to answer questions. And so I want Dead Presidents Club. If you're in the Facebook group, if you're not, it's free. Get in there. But I want this to be an environment where we can be a little bit more approachable. Listen, I love all the guys out there that are doing this stuff at scale. I love those guys. Some of those guys are my mentors. Some of those guys are my heroes. But you can't connect with them, right? It's hard to connect in those giant ecosystems. What I wanted is to have a place where community could really connect on a micro level, because when the tides rise, all the boats float, and that's really what the goal of this whole thing is. So thank you for joining up this evening. I hope it's been helpful. And if you got any questions, or if you want to learn more, or if you're like, man, I don't know about this like self-directed IRA, or this retirement, like I don't know how to put my retirement money into real estate deals, just DM me and I'll send you the packet. We can help you do that. We literally have a partnership with Horizon Trust and the Entrust Group, where we can literally take your retirement money, move it into an IRA with no penalties, no fees, no nothing. And you can invest in our deals, your own deals. You can do other types of deals, other types of assets. So we'd be happy to let you guys know about how all of that works as well. So hopefully this was helpful, and have a good Friday night, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. All right. I just ended Instagram, but somebody had a couple of questions. So, how are you doing 10 flips at once? Are they all in the same area? No, they're not. But our ecosystem is larger because we have a student population and a community. So like, I don't do deals in places. I don't do fix and flips, especially in places that I don't have boots on the ground. But because we have 50 students in our ecosystem, and so like I partner with different ones of them on certain fix and flip projects because they can do the management. And so we're doing several up in Michigan. I've got some in Texas. Most of my fix and flips right now are in California, where we're from. But no, they're not all in the same area. That's kind of, we scale because we partner. And I believe in that. So somebody says, I'm looking to connect with a private money lender. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I hope that tonight was helpful in kind of exploring, how you can build your credibility. Oh, you're in Redding, California? No way. That's awesome, man. We're from Redding. We're in Texas right now. But Redding is home base. So, most of my flips are in Redding. So I don't know if we've connected or not, but that's awesome, man. I love the Redding market is booming. And actually, National Geographic, fun fact, whether you're in California or not, National Geographic just ranked Mount Shasta, as one of the top 5 hidden ski communities, mountain communities. So that's that is a really fun deal. Got introduced from Derek. Have a lot of cool. Yeah, we're in San Antonio right now. If you got deals in San Antonio, hit me up. I'm finding them harder and harder to do. The spreads aren't as good here, but if you've got legit deals, I'm a buyer, so let me know. But appreciate you guys. Have a good night, and we will talk to you